Let's just show you this headline in the Sun newspaper. Steve Baker, our guest here. It's from last month. The headline, the net zero boiler ban will leave Britain's poorest out in the cold. This is part of what you've been writing about in terms of the costs of going green, Steve, and the government's net zero target. That's reducing the UK's carbon emissions to zero by 2050. Now, in this particular piece, you talk about the cost of replacing gas boilers with more costly green alternatives, and you say ministers plan to end the comfortable lifestyles we have enjoyed for generations. Now, Steve, as you know, ministers would argue very powerfully that their plan is to prevent catastrophic global warming.
Yeah, that's clear, but this is an evasion, if I may say so. So I'm not talking about the science, I'm not talking about the goals. The goals are in law, the science is settled, this is talking about it, arguing about his OTOs. I'm afraid I'm being a details man here and an engineer and asking the question about how. How are we going to do it? Who's going to pay? Where are the costs going to fall? Is it going to work? So I think the line I'm taking is one which anyone could agree with, that what we're doing, getting to net zero, must be politically and economically viable using existing technologies. Because if it's not, then it will fail. So even if people want to get to net zero faster, harder, they should be looking at methods which are going to work. So I think saying to people £10,000 for a heat pump, by the way, you'll need to raise your floor levels so you can get the underfloor heating in or have bigger radiators. That will be extra cost. Pricing you out of owning a car. These things are not going to turn out to be politically viable.
Right, politically viable we'll discuss, but you do accept it's not cost-free to the economy to take no action,
of course, yeah,
on global warming. So, I mean, in terms of the UK economy.
It's a complex system of trade-offs. There's absolutely no doubt about that whatsoever, yes.
But it's necessary, says Siobhan. So she obviously is prepared for her constituents to bear some of the costs that you've been talking about, if they get help, if they're the poorest. Do you accept that?
Well, yeah, but there's about 4 different conversations here. Why do we need to do something? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? What if we do? What if we don't?
Right. Well, on the why we need to do something, I thought you said that was settled.
Yeah, it is settled. But what I'm afraid in this conversation, one of the things I've found is, as you just did, people keep pivoting back, but to we must do something. Yes, I accept we must do something. I mean, you know, the idea that the lives of billions of people should hinge upon the supplies of a finite resource that's fossil fuels would be madness. We should go to net zero for all kinds of reasons, including climate change. And it's a good idea to do it, and we should do it well. So I'm really asking the questions about how. And I would say to anybody who's questioning whether carbon dioxide's a greenhouse gas or whether our emissions of it have made a difference, they're wasting everybody's time having that conversation.
What is your plan then to get to net zero?
Well, if I may first, the point about we were talking about the rich and the poor earlier, but we're putting 11 billion a year into renewables through our energy bills at the moment, through consumers paying. Siobhan was talking earlier about poorer people paying more for everything, which would include energy, of course. That translates into subsidies of £300 to £400 million a year for a wind farm, rising to up to £500 million for, I think it's Hornsey 1. These are enormous amounts of subsidy. It's no surprise that Siobhan and I on the Treasury Select Committee have had people giving evidence to us who are all in favour of this system. Of course they are. So the GWPF has published a proposal to go forward, and it involves using small modular nuclear reactors and also closed cycle, so-called alum cycle, which is a closed cycle that uses gas, but it also captures the carbon dioxide. So there are ideas out there using existing technology which could get us to net zero. But what we can't do is keep kidding ourselves, for example, about the cost of solar, when a recent report in the Harvard Business Review is an impeccably right-on publication as you could find, which shows that when you take the costs of recycling solar, then the costs of producing solar electricity go up 4 times. You know, we've got to get very, very real about the true costs, life cycle of the technologies we're deploying.
You were elected on a manifesto that promised the UK will lead the global fight against climate change by delivering on a world-leading target of net zero by 2050. Should the government reconsider that pledge?
So what I'm asking is questions about how we're going to get there, which are in fact compatible with the manifesto. But in Wickham, at the last general election, the public were all over the green issues. They were very high prominence, and I promised to look into this issue, and I've come to the conclusion that this is the territory that I should be on. But I'm not challenging the targets. I'm not challenging the science. I'm asking how are we going to do it. And actually, I think people should be, I think as has happened on this programme, uniting around the idea that we need to use tactics which will work.
Right. You did also suggest though, I think I'm right in saying that you thought there could be sort of riots worse than the poll tax if there wasn't more honesty on this. Did you really mean that? I
really mean that, yes, because we've had the chief executive, I think it was Vauxhall, say that only upper middle class people will be able to afford cars. Well, I then see a tension that young people in my constituency are at once learning to drive and also demanding green measures. I think they're going to be very disappointed when they discover they can't own a car, can't go on holiday, will have expensive heating that comes up to a lower temperature, their electricity isn't reliable, and by the way might actually be turned down in order to support somebody else's electric car charging next door.
All right.
You know, this is capable of creating enormous tensions in society at a time when every political party agrees it's the right policy and there's no choice at the ballot box. We've been down this road before with Brexit, and that's why I'm warning that we'll have a terrible political crisis if we don't sort it out.